Disclaimer. There's already enough valid criticism on the internet letting you know just how botched of an experience Halo Infinite is. From its egregious monetization, lack of content for a live service game, missing features and modes from past games, broken theater, and worst of all, desync. I'll briefly acknowledge these flaws, not because I want to profit off of the wave of negativity or redundantly add to the justified doom and gloom surrounding Infinite and the Halo franchise as a whole, but because I also don't want this video to come off as some sort of blind coattail riding of Halo Infinite or 343 Industries. The game and the company deserve to be called out, but it's already being done enough. And that's not to say I won't make a video in the future criticizing Halo or 343 Industries. I'm just saying that's not what this video is about. With that being said, for all of Infinite's flaws, it's still a damn fun game in my opinion, which makes it even worse that it's plagued with a horde of issues. I almost feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I acknowledge Infinite's flaws like the majority of the community, but I don't hate its gameplay like most of the classic fans. In fact, I love Halo Infinite's gameplay. It's in a three-way tie for my favorite Halo multiplayer. You know what the other two games are? Halo 3 and Halo 5 Guardians. It's amazing to me that two games that are polar opposites of each other exist in the same franchise. And they are both my favorites. But the ends of the spectrum each have something to offer that I cling to. Halo 3's simplicity, challenging but satisfying aiming, smooth melee system, unique interactions via equipment, and phenomenal physics grab me. Halo 5's fluid movement via its advanced mobility mechanics, heavy bullet magnetism, and melee tactics such as the Spartan Charge, Ground Pound, and the disgusting assassination animations entertained me. Although the games play completely different from each other, they each did their style of game the best in the franchise in my opinion. Halo 3 is my favorite classic Halo. Halo 5 is my favorite advanced inherent traits Halo. And Halo Infinite is the middle ground that brings the best of both worlds. Now there's no way I'm going to be able to express my thoughts as eloquently as the game design guru himself, Faven, but I will do my best to adequately explain why I enjoy Halo Infinite's multiplayer. First, let's talk about the most obvious distinction between Halo 3 and Halo 5's gameplay: movement. Halo 3 had no inherent advanced mobility mechanics, unless you want to count crouch jumping, I guess. Instead, the nuances in that game came from the Sandbox, the environment the game took place in, the unique interactions with said environment and other players, the weapons, and the decisions the player was able to have and make. It didn't need advanced movement, and neither did Combat Evolved or Halo 2. And I personally think the lack of advanced movement mechanics has not caused Halo 3 to age poorly, nor do I think it aged well despite its lack of advanced mobility. It aged well in part because of its lack of advanced movement, which allowed its sandbox to shine. And yet, somehow, I think the opposite will be said for Halo 5 in the future, as I think it will age well because of its advanced mobility mechanics, which the game revolves around. Sliding, thrusting, and clambering made the game feel fast, fluid, and fun. I loved how in gunfights, you could use your movement options to maneuver around some cover, to break your enemy's ankles, or reverse an ambush. The game was much more forgiving for mistakes than classic Halo, but that forgiveness resulted in entertaining gameplay that wasn't everyone's cup of tea and drove classic players away because it wasn't the classic formula, but it was damn sure my cup of tea. While Halo 3's movement encouraged the player to be more cautious, strategic, and team-minded, Halo 5 invited the player to get up close and personal. You could almost solo an entire team just off the thruster pack alone, which isn't the best idea on a competitive level. But I'm telling you, I was just mopping people up by leaving my teammates and going straight into the smoke.
Red team, game the lead. Rocket launcher ready.
Honestly, I might be a little bit biased because I was far better in Halo 5 than I was in Halo 3. I was ass ass in Halo 3. And it was still hard to combat players that were just as skilled with these movement mechanics as I was, which made the game feel sweaty. But I liked it. I find it quite interesting that Frosty, a competitive Halo pro who knows much more about the nuances of Halo gameplay than I do, stated that Halo 5 is much more competitive than Halo 3, because I personally found Halo 5 to be a lot easier due to the movement mechanics. Halo 3 was more of a strategic game, whereas Halo 5 was more of a tactical game. Halo Infinite mixes both styles together, sandbox and movement. Spartan Charge, Ground Pound, and Smart Link were removed. Thruster Pack was repackaged as equipment, and Sprint was extremely nerfed, making the movement feel a bit more classic, but not fully classic. Sprint is not only a gateway to the slide mechanic, but an unintended glitch was unearthed, known as curb sliding, which allows players to gain speed by running off a ledge and sliding right before they hit the ground. The higher the ledge, the harder it is to pull off. On a casual level, this isn't much of a factor, but once you get high in ranked or MMR, or at least from what I've seen in pro play and high-ranking players on YouTube, it becomes a mechanic that clashes with the intended gameplay of Infinite, which is supposed to have slower movement to create a more classic feel. But from my minimal experience with curb sliding, it's still a fun mechanic to play around with, and I wouldn't get irritated if someone were to use it against me. There's this specific slide on recharge that's hard to pull off that takes you like 2/3 across the bottom of the map. Imagine the dopamine levels one would experience as a result of using this mechanic to both avert certain death and get a kill or two. But even with the supposedly more classic movement being muddied a bit by curb sliding, I still find the game to be fun. I find this particular mechanic to be fun. You know what other games movement I found to be fun? Halo 5. Since I already touched on Halo 3 sandbox focus, that'll be our focus for this section. As stated earlier, whereas Halo 5 was more player and movement driven, Halo 3's focus on its sandbox was a key component of its compelling gameplay. First, let's talk about the weapons. Now this is where it gets difficult for me because I'm no guru when it comes to game design. But you want to know who is?
There are two major areas of concern I'd like to focus on, and it is in the relationship between a weapon's ease of use and effective range. If skill-based weapons are consistently losing to guns that are easier to use than them, then I consider that a lack of integrity within the game. That idea is actually controversial, and I acknowledge that. The idea being that easier to use weapons are dominated by precision weapons, and thus their value within the sandbox is negated, and so instead many believe weapons should be balanced around their effective range. And it is very obvious that 343 is of this mindset as well, and this is what they have done.
In Halo 3, the guns that were more skill-based always had a chance against easier to use guns without being locked to their most effective range. A BR could outclass the AR in close range, a sniper could outclass a BR in mid-range, a beam rifle could defeat a Covenant carbine in close to mid-range. This diversity of roles with each gun encouraged the player to move around the map more, even if their new position sacrificed the ease of use for their gun, creating unique interactions like this. And the fact that these hating ass bitches immediately betrayed me right afterward shows that they were shocked at the capabilities of the sniper rifle at a close range, a factor that one best not underestimate in a Halo 3 game. Because the weapons aren't completely defined by their effective range, but their ease of use is also a significant factor. In Halo 5, ease of use is significantly diminished as a factor because all the easier to use guns were buffed by stronger damage and bullet magnetism. So it was harder to beat an AR, SMG, or bolt shot in close range with a BR, carbine, or a light rifle in close range, because range of effectiveness was prioritized significantly more than classic Halo games, Halos 1 through 3, and more than ease of use. The skill behind every weapon was not only nerfed by the larger prevalence of effective range, but the lowering of skill for almost the entire sandbox. Due to the heavy bullet magnetism, damn near every gun was easy to aim with in Halo 5, especially the sniper and beam rifles. Them bitches were atrocious.
One shot, two kills?
Double kill. Double kill. Overkill.
And while they were still slightly harder to use than the automatics and precision rifles, the aim assist was so powerful that you almost didn't feel it, meaning it could outclass close to mid-range weapons and their effective ranges, not solely because of skill, but because of a nerfing of skill and a buff in ease of use. In my opinion, the hardest gun to use in that game was the plasma caster, and it simply didn't have any significant advantages over just using a BR. And it's supposed to be a power weapon. The reason why all these guns, with the exception of the plasma caster and storm rifle, had to feel so powerful was the advanced movement mechanics, which is why so many classic fans argue against them, which made it inherently harder to aim against enemies, so mechanics such as heavy aim and sprint stun had to be built to remedy them. The irony in this is that the movement mechanics almost make the weapon sandbox design redundant. Despite the weapons being designed from range of effectiveness, almost any gun could beat any gun because the player could A, easily move to the effective range of their gun, or B, thrust dodge within the enemy's effective range, throw a couple of their shots off, and reverse for the kill. Now did this ruin the gameplay for me? Hell nah! Because in Halo 5, the guns aren't the main focus, the movement is. The movement mechanics serve to simultaneously nullify both the ease of use and effective range of the opponent's guns, creating an environment where you can basically play however you damn well please.
Hey bro, I can effortlessly shit on this lobby without even like trying. Like I don't think people realize like how like great that feels. Like I'm sitting here like 30% trying, I'm just pissing. Like literally destroying these people. And Infinite, you play for the sandbox, and Halo 5, you are the fucking sandbox, bro. That's why this shit's so fucking fun. I'm literally a walking fucking sandbox. I'm a fucking walking tank.
But it also encourages close range fights. Earlier I said the BR was harder to use in close range against the AR in Halo 5. Well, not only is it not that much harder to use due to heavy aim, but if you find yourself getting shot too much, chances are there's some cover around that you can just easily thrust behind, use to break your opponent's ankles, and clamber over at the last minute to secure the kill either via shots, grenades, or the incomparable ground pound. And that's only if you haven't already Spartan charged your opponent to begin with. It took skill and reaction time to pull this off, and that to me was the charm of Halo 5's gameplay. On paper, this is bad game design because there are so many design choices that either counter or contradict each other. But there's a reason why I don't look back at Halo 5's gameplay with disdain. And it's because somehow this bad design resulted in fun gameplay that I've spent a boatload of hours on. The same can be said for Halo Infinite. The game has more challenging to master skill-based weapons like Halo 3, but they're all designed strongly off range of effectiveness rather than ease of use, even more so than Halo 5. The AR and BR are also super easy to use like in Halo 5. The major difference is that Infinite doesn't have as fast of movement as Halo 5 to counter the rolls of each gun, but its movement is still not as slow as Halo 3's, so there's a little more of an opportunity to open or close the gap on your opponents. It is extremely difficult to kill people with weapons outside of their defined roles in Infinite, regardless of the skill level of the player or the skill required to use a gun. Faven already talked about this in detail in the video I've been referencing throughout this commentary, so rather than discuss this in length, I'll just link his video in the description. But the point is, BRs are losing to ARs in close range. Snipers are losing to BRs in close to mid-range because a random bullet spread has been added to hipfire. Stalker rifles don't stand a chance outside of mid to long range. And the Mangler or Ravager are practically useless outside of close range. So yeah, this isn't the best weapon design on its own, but Halo Infinite is in a unique space where it's half sandbox based like Halo 3 and half movement based like Halo 5. The movement mechanics aren't as powerful as an offensive or defensive tool against the sandbox as they are in Halo 5, but the weapons are still based off range of effectiveness like in Halo 5, which means you have to be a bit more careful about you and your team's position, similar to Halo 3. with the two differences being that Infinite's range-based sandbox would be less forgiving if not for its movement mechanics being more advanced than Halo 3's. If I could summarize how I feel about multiplayer gameplay for each game, Halo 3 plays like a game of chess, Halo 5 plays like a mosh pit, and Halo Infinite, being the middle ground that it is, plays like a delicate game of cat and mouse. Or like those Scooby-Doo clips where they run in one room just to pop out the next. You constantly have to use your movement to change your position on the map, but you can't go too far into an enemy's effective range because there likely won't be a way out. And that to me is the beauty in Infinite's gameplay. Sticking with the subject of Sandbox, vehicle combat has always been a staple that distinguished Halo from every other shooter. In most other games, vehicles feel like they're in their own separate environment, away from infantry gameplay, especially the aircraft kill streaks in Call of Duty. In Halo, the vehicles are integrated with the main sandbox, and you can interact with them in a variety of ways. You can hijack them, or board and melee or bomb the tanks. You can snipe enemies directly out of the vehicle without damaging the vehicle. You can splatter enemies with vehicles. Aircraft can fly close to the ground to sacrifice defense for offense. Grenades and the gravity hammer are effective against vehicles, and EMP tactics stop vehicles from operating entirely to set up for a hijack or kill. In Halo 3, vehicles felt a bit OP for two reasons. One, they were generally tanky in health, specifically the tanks, go figure. If you didn't have a plasma pistol, power drain, or a Spartan laser, which felt OP themselves against vehicles, the only effective strategy against a vehicle was to team shoot them with mid to long range weapons. With light to mid class vehicles, a well-placed frag grenade could flip them over and a gravity hammer could send them into orbit. But that ain't happening with no tank or aircraft, Chief. Only other option was to hope a vehicle didn't splatter you before boarding it for a hijack, beatdown, or bombing, which only required one grenade, which was hard to do due to the slow movement in Halo 3. The second reason is that an operating vehicle's health was linked to the health of the vehicle operator, meaning that while the driver or pilot could die without exploding the vehicle, you couldn't destroy the vehicle without depleting the operator's health, killing them solely via explosion. This meant that you could operate vehicles indefinitely as long as you were able to regenerate your shields, making tanks and aircraft a bitch to deal with. Specifically the almighty Halo 3 Scorpion, which also had an insane fire rate and projectile speed. By the time Halo 5 rolled out, vehicles had undergone significant nerfs. Along with rockets, lasers, and EMP tools, this time consisting of the plasma pistol and splinter grenade, vehicle armor was now vulnerable to sniper rounds. The Hydra launcher's tracking ability also made it a threat. Along with this, vehicles just felt less tanky in general. The projectile speed for the Scorpion shot was reduced, the fire rate for both the Scorpion and Wraith was reduced, the Banshee and Ghost now had a limited charge for their boost, and the Warthog turret now had an overheating function. Add to this that the targets were now harder to hit due to advanced movement, and vehicle combat in Halo 5 felt kinda neutered, unless you were in an aircraft vehicle. Halo 5 added regenerative shields to the Banshee and the newly created Wasp. This made them feel like vehicles did in Halo 3, because as long as you stayed out of the line of fire long enough to heal those shields, you could stay in an aircraft vehicle indefinitely. The Mantis also had a shield, but as a ground vehicle, it was substantially easier to deal with. I dropped a whole ass 50 bomb using a Banshee, securing one of the two most prestigious medals in the history of Halo, the unfreaking believable. And it is at this point where I will plug my hour-and-a-half long extravaganza video about medals in Halo, link in the description. One underrated side effect about Halo 5 not having any developer-made big team battle maps is that the maps did feel quite open, especially the remakes, giving vehicles some much-needed breathing room. Halo Infinite's vehicular properties mostly take after Halo 5, with a plethora of weaknesses from miniguns and grenades. This time around, there are 3 EMP tools: the shock rifle, disruptor, and dynamo grenades. A major difference, however, is that in past games, if your vehicle got EMP'd, it would stay stationary for the entire duration of the effect. That's only true for stationary vehicles in Halo Infinite. If the vehicle had momentum before being EMP'd, it will carry that momentum until the EMP effect is done. That means if a chopper gets EMP'd, but it was boosting while it was getting EMP'd, it will still keep that same speed and soar like halfway across the map until the EMP effect is finished. Cool as hell. Another difference is that the Spartan laser is completely absent, replaced by the skewer, a power sniper that one-shots aircraft and light vehicles, 2-shots mid vehicles, and 4-shots tanks. I feel this is a welcome change because it gives vehicles a bit more breathing room, instead of allowing them to be huge one-shot kill targets that deter players from using them. Another change is that it takes multiple grenades to bomb a siege vehicle, whereas in past games, it only took one. All of these changes were unfortunately not enough to stop vehicles from feeling like they're made of paper mache. The tanks feel a bit stronger, but there have still been times where Scorpion was destroyed within like 25 seconds. But then again, there's that time I repeatedly shot myself with a Wraith to get a kill atrocity. On top of that, the tanks have these cockpits that can be shot open to expose the driver, allowing them to be killed without destroying the vehicle. The aircraft vehicles now feel laughably weak, especially the Banshee, when combined with its weak offense and difficult handling. Targets don't feel as hard to hit as they did in Halo 5 due to the reduction in advanced mobility, unless you're using a grapple hook. So that's a plus for vehicle operators. However, the claustrophobic map design doesn't really allow for much freedom of traversal, except for on Oasis. The increase in player count for BTB maps increased the number of shots against vehicles as well. Probably the worst aspect of Infinite's vehicles is the random spawns, which can unfairly award a team dub just by getting lucky, when they're granted a Scorpion or two when the other team is not. Honestly, I'd say Halo 3's vehicular combat is the best, but there's still immense fun to be had here. Firstly, all the vehicles except the Banshee feel offensively powerful. There's the Wraith clip from earlier. The Act-Man got a Grim Reaper medal and a Wasp. Hell, someone almost got the Demon medal on me using a Wasp in a BTB game. I've gotten up to a Rampage with the Scorpion before. Next, there's the grapple shot. Now I know that's another factor that nerfs vehicles, but I'm not going to complain about awesome shit like this, even if I am on the receiving end. Third, as I'll discuss later, Halo Infinite's vehicles have some awesome physics. And then there's the Razorback's ability to hold 4 Spartans plus an object on the back, including a weapon, fusion coil, power seed, or flag, which is also pretty awesome. The ability to push vehicles off the map and deflect Wraith shots with the repulsor is fun as well. The Chopper's original vehicle shredding mechanic was patched back in, and it feels awesome, but not overpowered due to how difficult it is to drive. Lastly, an underrated feature is the Doomsday mechanic, which is a visual indicator that a vehicle is about to explode, giving the operator an opportunity to escape. This can allow for so many interesting possibilities. The driver can exit the vehicle and escape the explosion, keeping the flag run alive. The shooter can continue to inflict damage on the vehicle to try to get it to explode faster and catch the operator in the radius. I've never seen this done before, but the operator of the vehicle can potentially drop it off in front of an enemy as an explosive gift while in Doomsday mode. Or you can just let your nuts hang like this. Vehicle Sandbox is far from perfect, but there's still loads of fun to be had here. I just think in general, vehicles should be designed to be overpowered to a certain extent, easily outclassing infantry with basic weapons and with like 2 or 3 weapons that specialize in stopping them. And that's why I like Halo 3's system the best. Next, we'll discuss each game's 4th branch of combat. Halo has traditionally revolved around guns, melee, and grenades. Halo 3 was the first to add a 4th branch to the mix through its equipment. Halo 3's equipment was tied to the environment, and that anybody could use equipment once it was thrown out. Bubble shields, Gravity lifts and regen fields can be used by the enemy that just killed the player that threw it out. Radar jammers, power drains, flares, and trip mines affected everyone in their radii, including the player that threw them out. Whenever you threw an equipment out, it could be used for or against you and your teammates. Equipment also presented new possibilities and interactions between players and or other equipment. Regen fields often resulted in boxing matches. Bubble shields resulted in mosh pits. You could either throw a regen field out inside of a bubble shield to heal you and your teammates in safety, or you could throw out a power drain to lure your enemies out of the bubble shield. You could throw a trip mine directly at a warthog and blow it up. I've never seen this done before, but you could potentially throw out a flare and blind your opponent into walking into a trip mine. And I don't even need to talk about the Mint Blitz clip. The equipment in Halo 3 didn't have much of a heavy impact on the core gameplay and did not dilute the golden triangle, but the opportunities for clutch saves, clever tactics, cool strategies, and unique interactions made equipment an excellent addition to the sandbox. Halo 5's fourth branch was the Spartan abilities, which we discussed a bit earlier. Sprint, Slide, Clamber, and Smart Link served to bolster the player's movement, while 2 melee abilities were added: the controversial Spartan Charge, and my personal favorite fourth branch ability in Halo history, the Ground Pound. Not the most original set of abilities, but their execution was lovely. I talked about how you could use the movement mechanics to maneuver around cover and zoom across the map. Adding to this, Spartan Charge, while annoying to some, felt satisfying to me, especially when pushing someone off the map. And there are not enough words in the world to express how much I love Ground Pound. I felt like a WWE superstar soaring through the air and punching somebody in the face. It was an absolutely satisfying and destructive move. In Halo Infinite, you get both equipment pickups like in Halo 3 and advanced movement from Halo 5. However, there are 2 key differences. 1, Spartan Charge, Ground Pound, and Smart Link from Halo 5 were cut, leaving only Sprint, Slide, and Clamber. While the equipment in Halo 3 was one-time use and tied to the environment, Infinite's equipment had limited charges and was tied to the player. Infinite doesn't reinvent the wheel with its set of equipment, but somehow, with the exception of the threat sensor, they provide entertaining moments, some that can't be recreated in any other game. I'll give it some credit though. The threat sensor does have some creative potential for wacky game modes like Covert Ops and Infection whenever they add that in the future. Allow me to throw out a hot take within this hot take video. The drop wall is underrated. The exact reason why people don't care for it is the exact reason I love it. It's just a weaker bubble shield that only protects the player from the front, but allows them to shoot projectiles through the back of the shield at anterior enemies. Instead of allowing the player to stand in the same spot while fully protected, the lower defense of the drop wall increases the pressure and sense of urgency in a gunfight, forcing you to strafe, move around a little, and pop out from behind the shield to your enemies, stall for backup, or get to some nearby cover. This concept works well with Infinite's movement mechanics, as you don't need an all-powerful shield when you can sprint, slide, fall down, or clamber into some cover. Then throw another one out to get to the next position. Or you can throw multiple drop walls out, one at a time, to hold a part of the map down. The best part about the disposability of the drop wall is that it spins one of the coolest and most underrated techniques in Halo history, the boom block. I've saved my life quite a few times and secured many a kill using this clutch technique. You could do this in Halo 3 also, but it would give the player more safety. There's something about the experience of blocking a rocket or grenade with a drop wall, then either running to the next spot or risking your life to counter with a kill. I'm not saying it's better than the bubble shield, I'm just saying it's a different experience and I enjoy them both. The thruster pack works the same way it did in Halo 5, so no need to discuss it in detail. The movement just feels buttery smooth. It's also the perfect tool to help you get the new ninja medal. So after I created this script, I actually got a chance to play Season 3 Halo Infinite, where the Shroud screen was released, and I think it's a pretty fun piece of equipment. It's the first smoke to be introduced in Halo history, but It's not like a regular smoke because you can see everything on the inside while you're on the inside. It's just that you can't see anything that's outside on the inside. And when you're outside, you obviously can't see on the inside. The one in Valorant has a similar mechanic, but it just works pretty well in Halo. And it gets really fun when multiple shroud screens are thrown out at once by multiple people, and everyone's just forced to cram into one spot of the map and create another mosh pit. In a way, it kind of evokes the feeling of the bubble shield, just without the physical shielded protection. Now it's time to discuss the two most universally liked equipment in Halo Infinite. The repulsor can push anything that's movable in the game, from projectiles, objects, enemies, and even the user. This equipment can not only be used as a defensive tool by pushing your enemies away to gain distance and throw their shot off, or by repulsor jumping to reach higher ground and escape a hot zone, but it was built with 3 of the coolest ways to kill an enemy in Halo history. Mind the Gap, where you push an enemy off the map; Pancake, where you kill an enemy by sandwiching them into a wall, pushing an object toward them to splatter them, or directly delivering a fatal blast like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Mind Crush; and Return to Sender, where you deflect an enemy projectile. You can't do this in any other game, let alone any other Halo game. At least not to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. And the same goes for the grapple shot, which can grab onto walls, floors, objects, allies, enemies, and can even be used to acquire weapons, vehicles, and equipment. You can do some crazy shit with this thing. It combos and clips well with melee weapons, snipers, and the rocket launcher. You can shift directions mid-grapple to swing a sharp turn, or even a 180. You can grapple the ground and combine it with a slide to get a super dash. One of the best things you can do with the grapple shot is grapple jacking, where you can use it to hijack enemy vehicles. The grapple shot and repulsor's charges may not fully be integrated with the environment like a power drain or a grav lift, but their uses definitely have some all-time great interactions with the environment. Also, active camo and overshield were now treated as one-time use power equipment and could be activated at the player's convenience. Some may feel that this is a cheap get out of jail free card that can easily piss off the enemy, akin to armor lock, but I actually like the clutch factor to it. I personally would not be pissed off if I was one shot away from securing the kill and an enemy pulled an overshield out his ass at the last second to save himself and turn the situation around. I'd just be waiting for my turn to do the same thing. Halo has historically had the best physics in first-person shooter history, with each iteration standing tall amongst the competition. From weapon blasting and grenade chain reactions in Combat Evolved, to the impactful splatter physics introduced in Halo 2, to the insane vehicle physics in Halo 3, and to grenade and hammer jumping in all the games up to Halo 5. There are simply incredible interactions that objects can have with each other in the Halo environment that you won't find in any other franchise. Halo 3 in particular has the most phenomenal physics in the series. The gravity hammer could deflect rockets and send vehicles to the moon. Vehicle splatters would send dead bodies sliding on the ground halfway across the map. You could throw a grenade at scenery objects like a traffic cone, then jump off of those objects in mid-air to perform trick jumps. Halo 5 doesn't have as good of physics as Halo 3, but when compared to other games, it's still head and shoulders above the rest. While the vehicle physics have a much more tame reaction to explosives, their splatters still felt satisfying, but in a different way, as bodies now reacted by being patty flipped vertically instead of eating the dirt. You can't mention physics in Halo 5 without mentioning Spartan Charge and Ground Pound, which I talked a little bit about earlier. Spartan charging people off the map was a great precursor to the repulsor, and while Ground Pound is irrelevant to Halo Infinite, I still want to talk about the fact that you can not only obliterate vehicles, but you can also get collateral kills with them. And I even experienced a mid-air ground pound trade.
Oh, hey there, don't mind me, sometimes this YouTube thing can get a little bit stressful with the copious amount of work, so I just decided to, sit back, relax for a little bit, and I decided to cook up another steaming hot take!
It's looking pretty damn good. Now, hear me out for a second. The removal of teammate collision, bullet ricocheting for every gun except for the Cinder Shot and Heat Wave, grenade jumps, and hammer jumps is absolutely unacceptable. And Infinite could use more objects with dynamic physics on its maps. But even so, Halo Infinite has amazing physics. Let me not waste any time in my argument by immediately acknowledging the fact that you can snipe rockets out of mid-air. Yep, you heard that right. There needs to be a better visual indicator for this, but you can do this and it will cause damage. I've done this before and I've accidentally swiped my teammate's kill. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never seen this in any other game before. I already spoke about the grapple shot and repulsor earlier, and the crazy things you can do with those. Here's a clip of me giving the Covenant back their bomb, and here's a clip of me grapple jacking a Wasp and sending the pilot to hell. There's also the grapple slide and curb sliding, both of which I've mentioned earlier. I think this mechanic is in practically every shooter, but I'll briefly note the collateral potential with the sniper because it's still an awesome mechanic that should never be removed from any future Halo game. But given 343's bad habits, we're probably going to see this mechanic get removed in the future. You can shoot different parts of a vehicle to negatively affect their handling. You can melee grenades in mid-air to deflect them. The crazy vehicle physics from Halo 3 are back! You can stand on top of airborne vehicles. The chopper shredding mechanic is back. I exited a Banshee and splattered an enemy. I scooted a Warthog using a skewer round and got a splatter. And that's not even mentioning any of the clips from Halo Infinite's Mythbusters, who confirmed that practically everything I've said here is possible in the game plus more. I'll take this time to talk about some features and improvements I wish were in Halo Infinite, or in possible future titles. So I'm not an expert on map design. I even recently failed to create an Undertaker-based BTB map. For now. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that Infinite's map design is inferior to classic Halo in terms of layout and dynamic elements. I'd like to see more diversity and risks taken with future maps, something we're gonna see via the Forge community. Hell, we've already started to see it on the developer side with Oasis, a new BTB map introduced in Season 3, which is asymmetrical and far more open and friendly to vehicles than any other map in the playlist. I'd like to see some returning vehicles, as well as new ones created in Halo Infinite. Team collision, bullet ricocheting, grenade and hammer jumping all need to return. I think vehicles need an overall health buff across the board, and that the Banshee needs a complete overhaul to be as strong as it was in Halo 5. I'd like to see the random bullet spread for hipfire on snipers get completely removed so we can get some more sick clips like this. I don't really know what to say about grenades and the difference between the design philosophies of 343's Halo games and Bungie's Halo games or anything like that. That would be an interesting conversation to have in the future, and I would be open to looking into that. And most importantly, above everything else, Desync gotta go. Desync has got to go. Get that shit the fuck out of here. It's easily the worst part of the entire multiplayer, and it severely hampers the experience of both matchmaking and customs. Halo Infinite's gameplay is a phenomenon that I will continue to enjoy for the duration of its lifetime. For all of its shortcomings, both within and surrounding its gameplay, Halo Infinite still offers an outstanding experience that shares similarities with both classic Halo and new Halo, specifically Halo 3 and Halo 5. But there are also unique experiences that can't be had in any other game, unique experiences that I've outlined throughout this video. I don't play Halo Infinite because it's some sort of great foundation for future Halos. As a matter of fact, I think as a whole, it's a terrible foundation. Not just because of the many flaws of the game in terms of gameplay, content, and polish, but because advanced movement mechanics should have never been a thing in main Halo titles to begin with. They just turned Halo into an entirely different game. An entirely different, awesome game that's somehow just as enjoyable to me as a classic Halo. Halo Infinite is the merging of two polar opposites, and for the most part, it brings the best of both worlds. It brings interesting sandbox elements through its equipment like Halo 3, even though the only neutral equipment is the shroud screen. It's got crazy physics from Halo 3. It's got movement-focused gameplay like Halo 5, where you can slip and slide in between rooms and cover to rack up kills. It's got all new experiences with the grapple shot, repulsor, and the ability to snipe rockets. I can't get over that. I recently got to play split screen with my brother in Halo Infinite, and his excitement at repulsing someone off the map on his first Halo game in over a year, preceded by sporadic sessions spread throughout the previous decade, he's on PlayStation, perfectly encapsulated how I feel about Halo Infinite's gameplay. To reiterate, Halo 3 is like a game of chess, Halo 5 is like a mosh pit, and Halo Infinite is like a delicate dance, a game of cat and mouse. The middle ground. Alrighty folks, that is it for another video on the channel. Make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons for me. Thank you all for allowing me to entertain you once again. This is P34J. I'm scupping. Y'all have a good one.